Begin by preparing the supplies in the RTS room. You will need a measuring cup, green mixing bowls, a placenta bucket if you are making a larger mold making kits, mixing tools, the molds, which are round, heart-shaped, or in the case of a smaller mold, a paper cup, and your instruction sheets. The instruction sheets are taped to the inside of the cabinet doors above the counter. The molds and the tools are located in the lower cabinets. Mold-making kits are in the tote underneath the sink. Mold-making kits have pre-measured ingredients in bags for different size molds. Please keep the bags so they may be reused. If there are no kits available, you can measure ingredients by following the instruction sheets. The material in Step 1 is an alginate, and the material in Step 2 is plaster. First, prepare your molds. You may want to remove the top of the cup if you are making a mold for a small baby. Next, measure out the water. For a small mold, you will need 2/3 of a cup of cold water. Pour the water into the green mixing bowl. Next, add the alginate powder to the green mixing bowl. Tap the powder down into the water and mix with short, quick strokes, scraping the sides often. Mix until the consistency is like creamy peanut butter with no lumps. Pour the mixture into the cup, filling the cup about halfway. Tap the cup on the work surface to remove air bubbles. Next, place the baby's arms or legs into the alginate mixture and hold for 2 minutes. You may need an assistant to help hold the baby. When the alginate pulls away from the side of the cup, it is dry and the baby's hands may be removed. They may be suctioned into the gel, so it helps to gently push down on the top of the gel while removing the baby's arms. Set this mold aside while you prepare the rest of the molds. Discard unused alginate into the trash. Do not put it in the sink. Step 1 is the same process for a larger mold. You will need 1 1/4 cup of cold water. Pour the water into the mixing bowl. Add the Step 1 powder to the water and mix as you did before, with short, quick strokes, scraping the sides often. Pour the mixture into the mold. You shouldn't have any excess alginate with larger molds. Tap the mold to remove air bubbles. You may have to tap harder than with a small mold. Support the baby and place the feet in the mold, covering the heels and toes. Be careful not to go too deep, especially with smaller babies, because you are more likely to get air bubbles in the finished plaster, which makes them fragile and more likely to break. Hold for 2 minutes. When the mold is set, carefully remove the baby's feet. Clean the mixing bowl and tool by scraping the dried mixture into the trash can. Next, you will mix the plaster in step 2. For a large mold, you will need 3/4 of a cup of cold water. Pour this into the mixing bowl. Add plaster powder and mix using the same technique as the alginate. The mixed consistency is similar to melted ice cream. Pour the plaster into the mold. Tap the mold to ensure that the plaster fills all spaces and removes air bubbles. If you see large bubbles, you can use the edge of the mixing tool to pop them. Tap the mold to smooth it out. Set the plaster aside to dry, about 45 minutes. Mixing plaster for a small mold is the same process. You will need 1/2 cup of cold water. Pour the water into the green mixing bowl. Next, add the plaster powder to the green mixing bowl. Tap the powder down into the water and mix with short, quick strokes, scraping the sides often. Pour the plaster into the mold. For small molds, like hands, pour in a little at a time and tap down to fill spaces and remove air bubbles. Turn the mold as you tap to work plaster down into all the fingers. Set the plaster aside to dry. To remove plaster from the molds, begin by laying out a sheet to make cleanup easier. Peel off the paper cup. Use a scalpel to cut away at the gel medium. If you feel something hard, that is the plaster, so do this delicately because the plaster is fragile, especially if it was a smaller baby. Carefully cut and peel away the gel medium. Plaster on the outside that has seeped down the edges of the mold can be carefully broken off. It can be cleaned up later with the scalpel. Go slowly around the hands as they are very fragile. If a piece breaks, it may be fixed with plaster glue. Open the heart-shaped mold by unclasping the side and pushing up from underneath. Support the gel while pulling off the bottom of the mold. Carefully cut and peel away the gel medium. You may need tweezers to remove the gel from tight spaces. Here is an example of a very large mold of a baby's profile and hand. Flip the mold over and peel it off. Cut away the gel medium. This mold has a tendency for the plaster to seep down the edges. You can trim it off with a scalpel. You can also clean up any air bubbles by gently scraping the plaster. Discard the trimmed alginate and plaster in a trash can. Place the plaster pieces in trays to deliver to the family.